know that I throw hands, right? You know that I throw hands, right? You know that I throw hands, right? You know that I throw hands, right?
Elisa, thanks. And now to a tragedy in Tamarac after a woman is found dead. 7's Samantha Sosa is there live with more on the investigation and what we know about the victim. Samantha.
Tavares, good afternoon. The Broward County Sheriff's Office's mobile command center is still here on the scene as investigators continue processing evidence here. And now the Sheriff's Office is officially calling this a murder investigation. Detectives continue going in and out of a second-floor unit Thursday afternoon at the Tamarac Village Apartments along Commercial Boulevard. Investigators processing bags of evidence, including some found outside on the sidewalk. This command center here more than 20 hours after a deadly discovery.
Our caller says that there's a gash on the patient's neck. It looks like someone slashed her neck.
This harrowing 911 call went through around 3 in the afternoon Thursday. Broward deputies later finding a young woman dead. Family says she was just 23 years old. Friends identify her as Kayla Hodgson, pictured here, a flight attendant and bartender for special events. Crime scene tape surrounded the area. 7 Skyforce hovered above the investigation where detectives say the victim died under suspicious circumstances. A man also seen being transported by ambulance. Family and friends of the woman who died quickly showing up. Some embracing while others anxiously waited for answers. Deputies focusing part of their investigation on this white Range Rover parked nearby. Neighbors coming home to see the massive crime scene worried for their own safety.
You don't know if it's someone that lives here, or if it's someone that the person knew that lives outside, but yeah, it's definitely concerning.
On the morning of July 13th, 2022, a flight departed New York carrying various passengers whose destination was Florida. On its own, the journey meant nothing. Flights leave and land every hour. Passengers arrive with plans that range from ordinary to private. But investigators would later determine that this particular trip was not routine. It marked the beginning of a sequence of events that ended inside a Tamarac apartment. At the center of this case are two women, 31-year-old Sakenya Thompson and 23-year-old Kayla Hodgson. Authorities allege that Sakenya Thompson traveled across state lines and entered Kayla's apartment, where Kayla was later found dead. What happened between the moment the flight landed and the moment police were notified is now the focus of a criminal investigation. Investigators began reconstructing a timeline that starts days before the trip. Phone records, travel details, and prior communication became relevant pieces of evidence. Each action was examined for intent, sequence, and consistency. The distance traveled raised immediate questions. Kayla Hodgson was in her Tampa apartment when the events unfolded. What she expected that day remains unclear. What is known is that she did not leave alive. Law enforcement now works backward, identifying when contact occurred, how access was gained, and what decisions were made inside that apartment. This case is not built on a single moment, but on a chain of actions. One decision led to another. A plane ticket became evidence. A visit became a crime scene. As the legal process moves forward, the question remains, at what point did this situation become irreversible? And most importantly, what was planned and what was not? You're watching Crimelens Uncovered, where the spotlight of social media casts the darkest shadows. From TikTok phenoms and Instagram couples to Facebook influencers, we peel back the filters to reveal the crimes behind the fame. Subscribe if you want the unfiltered truth behind the trending hashtags, because by the time a story explodes online, the tragedy has already happened. Now let's dive in. Kayla Hodgson was 23 years old and known for her vibrant energy and outgoing personality. She worked as a bartender and had experience as a flight attendant, a role that allowed her to travel frequently and explore new places. Kayla's social life was highly active. She regularly attended nightlife events, parties, and gatherings, where her presence was often noted for its liveliness and charisma.
Y'all, the best thing I ever did was have 2 phones, because if you know me, you know my phone is always dead. Like, it's crazy. So this is like literally the best thing, yo.
Her experiences and travels were frequently shared on her Instagram feed, giving friends and followers insight into her adventurous lifestyle and desire to explore the world. Kayla's ability to balance work, travel, and a busy social life made her a recognizable figure among her peers. Her outgoing nature and adventurous spirit created a sharp contrast to the tragic events that later unfolded in her Tamarac apartment, highlighting how suddenly a life so active and connected could be brought to a devastating halt. Kayla lived independently in her own apartment in Tamarac, Florida. Tamarac is a quiet suburban city in Broward County, known for its tree-lined streets, well-kept neighborhoods, and serene parks. With a mix of residential communities, small lakes, and green spaces, her residence functioned as her primary private space and later became the central location examined by investigators. Access to the apartment was controlled, meaning entry would have required consent, prior arrangement, or familiarity. This factor has remained significant in determining the circumstances surrounding the incident. Her daily routine, as reconstructed by authorities, did not show publicly confirmed signs of disruption or warning before the incident. Investigators reviewed her recent activities to identify whether her schedule suggested an expected meeting or visitor. Any deviation from her normal routine was treated as relevant to establishing context. Kayla's communications leading up to the incident were analyzed. Phone records, messages, and digital interactions were reviewed to determine who she was in contact with and when those exchanges occurred. These records were used to establish timelines and clarify expectations prior to the events inside her apartment. Her personal relationships were assessed to determine whether unresolved conflicts or ongoing tensions existed. Among these, her connection to Sakenya Thompson was identified as directly relevant. Investigators focused on the duration and nature of their interactions to understand how the relationship developed leading up to the incident. There has been no public indication that Kayla was involved in criminal activity or under investigation prior to the incident. Law enforcement attention focused on her only after authorities were alerted. Her actions are examined solely to establish sequence and clarity rather than responsibility. Sakenya Thompson is a 31-year-old woman who resided in New York at the time of the incident and became the central figure in the investigation into the death of 23-year-old Kayla Hodgson. Thompson worked as a nail technician and regularly showcased her work on her Instagram feed, which reflected a growing clientele and a visible presence in her local community.
Good morning, y'all. Started off the day with some clients. She had on the set for like a month. This was her birthday set, some chrome heart nails. I recorded this acetone because it looked really cool with like my pigment. It's my other client. She just got nails again for the first time in like a month or two.
Publicly, she was described as a fierce individual, especially regarding her personal relationships, and was known to closely monitor her boyfriend, Terry, and his movements. In multiple TikTok videos, she discussed or implied consequences for anyone who attempted to cross her, displaying a pattern of controlling behavior in a digital format that investigators noted while examining her personality and potential motives.
Be talking about me thinking I ain't gonna go look on their page. I be looking at y'all page, and y'all can't talk about me because
You know that I throw hands, right? You know that I throw hands, right? You know that I throw hands, right? You know that I throw hands, right?
These social media activities provided authorities with insights into her behavior, her assertive tendencies, and her interactions with others. The relationship between Sakenya Thompson and Kayla Hodgson was central to understanding the events that led to the crime, and investigators have focused on the interactions, history, and potential conflicts between the two. Sakenya Thompson and Kayla Hodgson were connected through a shared romantic link. At the time of the incident, Kayla was dating Thompson's ex-boyfriend whose name was Terry, and it was indicated that this relationship was the central factor in the conflict that led to the fatal encounter. Law enforcement reviewed communications, social media activity, and interactions between the two women, which showed that Sakenya had expressed frustration and resentment over Kayla's involvement with her former partner. Investigators determined that Sakenya Thompson had attempted to confront Kayla indirectly before the trip, including online messages and social media exchanges. At some point, Thompson was reportedly blocked by Kayla on social media, which investigators consider a key escalation in the situation. This blocking may have influenced Sakenya's decision to travel from New York to Florida, as authorities view the trip as deliberate and targeted. Sakenya Thompson, traveled from New York to Florida shortly before the incident at Kayla Hodgson's Tamarac apartment. Investigators reviewed airline records to confirm her boarding, arrival, and exact timing, establishing her presence in Florida during the critical window. The trip itself is a key element in understanding the sequence of events. Crossing state lines prior to the alleged crime has legal significance and contributes to the timeline under investigation. Upon landing in Florida, Kayla Thompson traveled from the airport to Tamarac, where Hodgson's apartment is located. Surveillance footage and transit records helped confirm her route and estimated arrival time. Each stage of the journey was analyzed to define the window during which she could have arrived at the apartment. On the morning of July 13, 2022, around 5 a.m., Kayla Thompson went to Kayla Hodgson's apartment in Tamarac, Florida, where she allegedly killed Kayla upon entering the unit. Investigators have reconstructed her movements immediately before the incident using surveillance footage, building access records, and GPS data from her phone to establish her arrival and approach to the apartment. Upon reaching the building, Kayla allegedly gained access to Kayla's unit, where she carried out the killing immediately after entering, and then left the apartment immediately after committing the act, before authorities were aware of the incident. The homicide was discovered the morning after the alleged incident, when law enforcement received a report from a neighbor who noticed unusual activity at Kayla Hodgson's Tamarac apartment. The neighbor stated that the lights in the unit had remained on at irregular hours, and that Kayla had not been seen leaving the building for an extended period. Police arrived promptly at the apartment complex and conducted an assessment of the exterior and common areas before entering the unit. Upon entering the apartment, officers observed signs indicating a violent event, including disarray and items displaced throughout the living space. They immediately secured the scene to prevent contamination and preserve potential evidence. Emergency medical personnel confirmed that Kayla Hodgson was deceased inside the apartment. Law enforcement officially classified the case as a homicide and began a full-scale investigation. Following the discovery of Kayla Hodgson's body, investigators focused on identifying the individual responsible for the crime. Evidence quickly pointed to Kayla, who had traveled from New York to Florida prior to the incident. Law enforcement obtained travel records confirming Kayla's flight and arrival in Tamarac shortly before Kayla's death, establishing her presence in the city at a critical time. Investigators collected physical evidence inside the apartment, including fingerprints and DNA samples, which were analyzed and linked to Kayla. Security footage from the apartment complex and surrounding areas showed a person matching her description entering the building around the estimated time of the crime. Digital evidence, including text messages and phone records, further confirmed communication between Kayla and Kayla in the days leading up to the incident, establishing both contact and opportunity. Authorities also reviewed Kayla's prior interactions with Kayla, identifying patterns of contact and correspondence that corroborated her connection to the victim. Items recovered from Kayla's belongings were examined for evidence of planning or intent, further linking her to the events in Tampa. Investigators reconstructed a timeline placing Kayla inside or near the apartment when the crime occurred, combining physical evidence, digital records, and witness accounts. Each piece of evidence independently confirmed her presence, while collectively establishing a clear connection to the crime scene. Law enforcement coordinated with multiple agencies to ensure that the interstate nature of the case was properly documented and legally actionable. Every step of the investigation emphasized the link between Kayla and the crime, creating a comprehensive narrative supported by verifiable evidence. Law enforcement identified Kayla Thompson as the primary suspect after evidence placed her in Florida at the time of Kayla Hodgson's death. Police confirmed her location and coordinated across state lines to carry out her arrest according to legal protocols. Kayla was taken into custody without incident, and the arrest was formally documented with the date, time, and location recorded.
New details tonight on an arrest in New York City. This after a young woman was killed last month inside her apartment in Tamarac. The Broward Sheriff's Office announced that the suspect, Kayla Thompson, is now in custody. CBS 4's Peter O'Dinch joins us live from the Tamarac Village complex with the very latest on this story. Peter.
Well, Naja, BSO says that the suspect was arrested in a neighborhood in Queens. That was 3 weeks after the homicide here. It's also where residents are relieved.
I feel terribly bad that happened to her.
Shayla Hernandez was horrified by the murder of her neighbor, identified by friends and family members as 23-year-old Kayla Hodgson, seen here and in photos in a post from loved ones on a fundraising website. BSO says they responded to Hodgson's second-floor apartment on July 13th after a 911 call about an unresponsive woman. They say they discovered that Hodgson died at the scene here at the Tamarac Village complex. On July 25th, a warrant was issued for 28-year-old Sakina Thompson. She was arrested on Wednesday in New York City.
Making an arrest makes me feel a lot more comfortable.
BSO is not saying what led them to their suspect, but an arrest affidavit says Sakina Thompson was demonstrating a depraved mind without regard for human life by stabbing with a sharp object with a premeditated intent to cause death.
I am very happy to hear about it because we were scared. We heard different stories from different people, and I happen to live on the floor above her, so I'm very happy. It makes me feel a lot better and more secure that they finally arrested somebody.
Following her arrest, Sakina Thompson was charged with first-degree murder, premeditated homicide, and unlawful entry into the apartment. Prosecutors emphasized that the charges reflected both the deliberate nature of the alleged act and the fact that she had traveled across state lines to confront the victim. These charges formed the basis of the prosecution's case and defined the legal framework for upcoming court proceedings. During her initial court appearance, Sakina was informed of the charges and her legal rights, including the right to remain silent and the right to legal counsel. The judge set conditions for detention, which included continued incarceration pending trial. Given the seriousness of the charges and the risk of flight, investigators continued to analyze forensic evidence and digital records to support the case. The trial concluded in October 2025, when a jury returned a guilty verdict for first-degree murder. The decision came after only about 1 hour of deliberation, confirming the prosecution's argument that Sakina had traveled from New York to Florida with the intent to kill Kayla. The jury rejected the defense's self-defense claim, which argued that Thompson acted to protect herself and her unborn child. On December 1, 2025, Sakina was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, ensuring that she will remain incarcerated for the rest of her life.
I do believe the defendant's, in this particular situation's crime was heinous in the way she tracked down, located, showed up, and then killed Ms. Thompson. With that, the court does sentence Ms. Thompson to adjudicated guilty sentence to life in prison. Under Florida's criminal punishment code, that's without parole, and she will serve the remainder of her life in prison.
The conviction marked the end of the judicial process and underscored the legal consequences of her actions. The arrest, trial, and sentencing now form a complete narrative of accountability, linking the initial investigation directly to the final resolution of the case. Following the death of 23-year-old Kayla Hodgson, her parents faced the sudden challenge of arranging her funeral and memorial services under tragic circumstances. To manage the expenses and ensure proper arrangements, they created a GoFundMe campaign, allowing friends, family, and the broader community to contribute. The campaign outlined costs for funeral services, casket or cremation, and organizing a memorial that would honor Kayla's life. Beyond the financial support, it became a platform for people to share condolences, pay tribute, and acknowledge the impact she had on those around her. Contributions came from individuals who knew her personally, as well as from others moved by the circumstances surrounding her death, reflecting the wider attention her story had drawn. By providing a way for the community to participate, the campaign helped the family navigate both the practical and emotional challenges of the loss. It ensured that Kayla's final arrangements could be carried out with dignity and respect, while also giving her loved ones a sense of collective support. The initiative allowed the family to focus on grieving, while the public's involvement underscored the profound effect her life and her untimely death had on those who knew her. Social media discussions focused on the timeline, motive, and prior contact, between the two women, Kayla Thompson's and Kayla Hodgson's, investigators indicated that tensions and jealousy over personal or social conflicts likely contributed to the crime, influencing Kayla's decision to act. News stations interviewed neighbors and acquaintances for context. Coverage highlighted Kayla's sentencing and the legal outcome. Public attention, amplified by traditional and online media, documented verified facts and community reaction, establishing a record of the case's reception. What could have motivated someone to travel across state lines with deadly intent? Could this crime have been prevented if someone had noticed warning signs? Drop your thoughts in the comment section. And that concludes today's case. But remember, this is just one of countless hidden stories waiting to be brought to light. Here at Crimelens Uncovered, we're committed to digging beneath the surface, giving a voice to those who can no longer speak, and making sure their stories are never lost to time. If today's investigation gave you a new perspective, just wait. There are more cases coming that will shock, disturb, and challenge the way you see the world. So don't forget to subscribe, tap the like button, and turn on notifications, so you're always first to know when a new story drops. We release fresh investigations regularly, and trust me, you won't want to miss what's next. Before you go, share your thoughts in the comments. Which part of this case resonated with you most? Your voice helps keep these stories alive. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and remember, the search for justice always begins with the truth. Crimelens Uncovered, where every case finds its voice.